Good afternoon, my name is Ruth Agbakoba and I'm a PhD student at the University of Glasgow in Scotland. Today I'm going to talk about the Living It Up project, which is a national digital platform to support the health and well-being of Scottish citizens. I previously presented this research at the 15th World Congress on Health and Biomedical Informatics in Sao Paulo, Brazil, and it was awarded the first place prize, so I hope that you enjoy it. So I'm sure you're all aware of the global demands that an ageing population with complex needs is placing on our healthcare system. In Scotland alone, having a long-term condition accounts for 60% of all deaths and 80% of primary care consultations. Even more importantly, 90% of all interaction within our healthcare system is within primary care, so we have a serious issue. Scotland is a beautiful country where healthcare is free at the point of care. However, there has been long-standing issues in providing care and healthcare to people living in remote and rural areas. The government is now focused on creating a world-class digital nation by 2020, using technology as an enabler. There's a focus on prevention, supported self-management, and person-centered care. Living It Up is a self-management hub which provides a range of products and services to empower people to take ownership over their health and well-being. They provide a range of tools to enable people to remain connected with their local communities, to upskill them in using technology, to find local and national assets that they can use to meet their needs, to support a chronic condition, for self-management, and also to provide ways that they can contribute to their local community. And the platform has already won numerous awards across Scotland. So just to give you an idea of the sheer scale and size of this huge endeavour, there are more than 30 organisations involved in this project in co-designing and developing an iterative platform. There are representatives from 6 sectors: health and social care, education, housing, the voluntary sector and statutory sector. My research focuses on the implementation of this platform in real time and at scale. I used a range of qualitative methods and techniques to track the development of this platform over time, and I also wanted to capture the journey of implementation at scale. I used the Ritchie and Spencer thematic framework to identify themes and map these themes to the normalization process theory. The normalization process theory looks at the process of implementing and integrating new technologies and services into routine practice. It makes reference to 4 key domains. The first being coherence, which looks at how people develop a shared sense of understanding of a new e-health service. Second, cognitive participation, which looks at the relational work and the engagement work that needs to be done in order to ensure that people buy in and sustain a new service. The third domain is collective action, which looks at the work of putting this intervention or a new e-health service into practice. And the fourth and final domain, which is reflexive monitoring, which looks at the work of appraising and evaluating a new e-health service. So what are the barriers to implementing e-health on a large scale? Well, firstly, there were some organisational and social factors. Given the fact that this was a large multi-stakeholder endeavour, there were some issues and a large degree of tension when voicing opinions and making decisions, and there were also some issues and difficulties which affected the traditional tendering process. In order for some stakeholders to proceed with some work, they usually had to obtain a letter of intent, and this meant that they worked at risk. This letter of intent meant that they would agree to work, and also acknowledge that there would be delayed financial payment, which wasn't always an ideal situation, as we can see here from a stakeholder, and I quote, who said, "The project was officially meant to start in June, and as a delivery partner, we did not get the contract until the following January. So, we worked at risk to try and be a good partner, but, for business, that's not satisfactory." There were also some issues in educating some stakeholders, which slowed down the traditional implementation process, and also for them to develop a shared sense of understanding. It took some time. As we can see here from a quote who said, "There was a lack of understanding of digital technology and what it can do now. And on the service side, they were not pushing the boundaries. There were also some technical barriers where the current infrastructure was unsuitable to support elements of the platform. This was a platform which challenged the traditional boundaries and models of care. It was very much innovative. However, in some areas across Scotland, there is a lack of broadband, for instance, and having a lack of broadband affected the readiness of people adopting this platform. As we can see here from this quote, looking at our international markets and speaking to our counterparts in the UK, I think it's very much a pioneering project. We're actually moved to a kind of model that's maybe 5 years ahead of its time. Living It Up aimed to provide a seamless and integrated journey of care for users, but it was a consensus among stakeholders that achieving this vision might be a complex process, as some stakeholders worked in silos within their organisations on particular work, and this meant that difficulties only arise once they integrated their work into the wider platform. As we can see here from a technical partner who said, and I quote, "So the problem is, until you have interlinked them, you do not know that they're going to work. So supplier A could build product 1 and test it, but when it goes live, it might not work because of something that supplier B has running in the background." And lastly, the platform set out to become the premier source for Scottish citizens to access their health and well-being. They also wanted to become a beacon for other countries, but they faced challenges in how they're going to go about that. As we can see here, a stakeholder said, "The requirements were gathered from the people in Scotland. Now the market is not just the people in Scotland, the market is outside of Scotland. So for Living It Up to be commercialised and to become a product or service that people will buy, it also needs to meet the needs of people outside of Scotland." But what are the things that really did work well, and what were the enablers that facilitated this implementation of this innovative project? Well, firstly, this was a service designed for and by the public, using one of the largest co-design processes in Europe. The ethos behind Living It Up is that people remain at the heart of service transformation. The use of local community champions who either had a vested interest in the project or who were involved in the co-design process really were essentially the driving force into ensuring that people buy in and engage into the platform. As we can see here from a project manager who said, "What I've done is I've been very lucky and I've had a great group of core local community champions who are basically, in a way, I'm leaving it to them because I think it sells better when it's coming from actual users." There were also great benefits from small and medium-sized businesses. As we can see here, they were able to make gains in being a part of a large collaborative project. As we can see from one business owner who said, "As a company, we've had great benefit from being a part of this project because it has allowed us to establish a position in the individual health market, and that's given us opportunity." There was also a move towards embedding and sustaining change, where some of these services are now embedded into statutory services across Scotland. And now project managers from Living It Up have been holding workshops to ensure that it's now integrated into the routine working patterns. As we can see here, so we've been kind of running workshops in all the areas, just in how we can do that, and actually just to get them to implement it as part of their daily working lives. Users of the platform play a vital role in shaping its development, and there are plenty of opportunities and different ways that users could provide their feedback, which help to personalise the platform. As we can see here from the support office, and I quote, they said sometimes they'll be given feedback on a one-to-one basis at workshop events, and that will shape the development of Living It Up. If they go through the digital portal, then that goes directly to the support office, who then again push that out, and we see if things can be improved. And lastly, another key enabler, which was a very key finding that we identified, was this notion of trust. Some of these organisations have no previous working relationships, and it was only through the course of this project, collaborative project, that they were able to develop a trusted working partnership. As we can see here from a technical partner who said, we've moved from a customer-supplier relationship to more of a partner relationship, and I think that's absolutely essential to solving some of these problems that we have in using technology to provide healthcare. We need innovation, and we need to have a trusted relationship to get that right. So, this study explored the views and understandings of stakeholders in developing a national digital health and wellbeing platform. We were able to gain a wide range of views which are comparable to existing literature and substantiates our findings. The use of the normalization process theory was also useful to us in capturing the work of implementation and highlighting the barriers and facilitators to the journey of implementation at scale. It also served as a basis for learning and critical reflection. However, there were some study limitations. The first being, at the time of the study, the deployment was still in process, so we were dealing with and operating in a fast-paced and dynamic environment. Secondly, we also found there was a lack of data from actual end users at the time that we carried out the study, but since then we've carried out some focus groups and we're now finalising these outputs. Lastly, we spent a considerable amount of time coding and analysing our data set, and we would have liked to conduct some additional analysis to quantify the impact of some of our barriers and facilitators, but due to time constraints, we were not able to do so. However, the good news is that a e-health service, a large-scale e-health service in Scotland, is achievable. However, there are some key learning points which need to be considered. The first being there's a need for flexibility and trust to support multi-sector partnerships. Secondly, people keep underestimating the scale of implementation. Therefore, there's a need to take into account the barriers to implementation, such as the lack of skill set deficiencies and inadequate infrastructure, in order to improve the chances of successful deployments in the future. And lastly, then, is a need for policy to support an innovative business working models. So if you would like further information on the project and the research, you can see the link and the reference below. I would like to take this opportunity to thank my team of supervisors who have worked with me collaboratively on the project, Dr. Marilyn McGee-Lennon, Dr. Matt Millay-Brum-Rain, Professor Nicholas Watson, and Professor Francis Mayer. I would also like to especially thank my study participants for their enthusiasm and for their time. I would also like to acknowledge the sponsors, the Scottish Government and Innovate UK, and also the UK Medical Research Council, who are funding my research. Thank you for listening.